In Australia's music scene, the battles haven't always been fought on stage. Sometimes the real fireworks ignited behind the curtains, over airwaves, or on the pages of the music press. For decades, Aussie artists, bands, radio hosts, reviewers, and the media in general have clashed over opinions, creative differences, bruised egos, broken industry promises, and the ever-shifting power of the media. From stadium-filling rock giants throwing public jabs, to punk upstarts taking on commercial radio, to legendary feuds with Triple J, Channel V, and the ARIA machine, Australia's music history is packed with rivalries and feuds as chaotic, dramatic, and iconic as the songs themselves. Stay a while as I take you through 10 of Australia's biggest music industry rivalries. At number 10, we have Cold Chisel versus TV Week. The Cold Chisel versus TV Week rivalry was a decent-sized clash between iconic Aussie pub rockers Cold Chisel and TV Week. TV Week magazine were involved with the Countdown/TV Week Rock Music Awards in 1981. Cold Chisel had just dominated the nominations, managing to take home all 7 major awards at the ceremony. This was a clear sign of their popularity and commercial success following the release of their album, East. However, as an act to portray the band's disdain for what they saw as the superficial nature of the awards and the magazine's latecomer embrace of rock music, the band refused to accept any trophies. When it was Chisel's turn to perform to close the show, Jimmy Barnes altered the lyrics of My Turn to Cry to call out TV Week for using their image to sell magazines. If that wasn't enough, the band proceeded to trash the set before storming off stage. Guitarist Ian Moss later called TV Week a small, almost offensive TV magazine, jumping on the rock bandwagon. The stunt led to the magazine ending its association with the awards entirely. The band felt that, while they had built their reputation on the strength of relentless touring and a loyal fan base, TV Week had ignored them until their commercial success made them marketable, a perspective they aired loudly and physically on national TV. At number 9, we have Midnight Oil versus the commercial radio industry. Midnight Oil's rivalry with the commercial radio industry wasn't a classic feud of insults and confrontations. Instead, it was a long-standing tension born from the band's raw, politically charged rock going largely ignored by Australia's mainstream commercial radio stations. The radio stations were favouring more conventional, chart-friendly pop and rock hits. As a result, Midnight Oil built their early audience through shitloads of touring and the support of alternative outlets like Sydney's Double J, later renamed Triple J, which played their music when commercial networks wouldn't. Beyond rotational playlist snubs, the tension reflected deeper frustrations about how music was marketed and whose voices were played on the airwaves. Midnight Oil's emphasis on political issues, including environmentalism and social justice, didn't easily fit into commercial radio's safer and more sales-driven programming. Even though Midnight Oil are now recognised as Aussie music legends, frontman Peter Garrett would later express his disappointment at the continued dominance of US music on Australian commercial radio and the challenges this posed for local artists trying to break through, which is still ongoing today. At number 8, we have INXS versus Molly Meldrum. In the mid-90s, a rivalry unfolded between INXS and music critic Molly Meldrum, who was one of Australia's most influential music commentators and TV personalities at the time. The beef began when Meldrum publicly criticised INXS's 1991 live album, Live Baby Live, on the variety show Hey Hey It's Saturday, dismissing it as a very boring album and questioning its authenticity as a live recording. His comments pissed off the band, who felt they were unjustified and offensive. INXS considered legal action against Meldrum for his comments on national TV. Guitarist Andrew Farriss would later describe Meldrum's criticism as extremely annoying and a misrepresentation of their work. The feud lingered in the music community and became part of broader debates about the role of critics and media figures in shaping Australian rock history. Even 2 years after the original comments, frontman Michael Hutchence still expressed frustration over Meldrum's critique, with the commentary doing lasting damage on their relationship with Meldrum. At number 7, we have Bernard Fanning versus Ben Lee. The rivalry between Fanning and Lee was a bit of a short and silly one, born from clashing personalities and public jabs in the early 2000s. Fanning once referred to Ben Lee as a precocious little cunt, after Lee had described his third album as the greatest Australian album of all time. Lee adopted the phrase and added it to some of his merch. Fanning would later apologise for the comment. While the original insult is decades old, the rivalry has experienced a recent flare-up, albeit tongue-in-cheek. In May 2024, Lee appeared to acknowledge the old feud with a post on social media. Inspired by the public feud between Drake and Kendrick Lamar, Lee posted a message suggesting to Fanning, "Let's start shit up again, man," challenging the former Powderfinger singer to teach the kids how it's done. At number 6, we have Daniel Johns versus Silverchair. The long-standing feud between former Silverchair frontman Daniel Johns and his former bandmates was born from Johns' evolution as a songwriter, taking over creative control of the band, and his subsequent withdrawal due to his struggle with mental health. While Johns has publicly stated that he asked his former bandmates to collaborate on his solo work to show he holds no issue with them as people, this completely contradicts his previous statement that he wouldn't work with them ever again, even with a gun to my head for $1 million. The rivalry experienced a more recent public escalation, with events transpiring in late 2023, centred around the bassist and drummer's memoir, Love and Pain, and the corresponding Australian story documentary, A Silver Lining. Johns publicly criticised his former bandmates for repeatedly denying him an advance copy of the book, which contained detailed recounts of Johns' personal struggles, including his battle with anorexia. Johns claimed he was uncomfortable being interviewed to help promote it, without knowing the contents. Johns was not happy. By leveraging his songwriting rights, Johns successfully had the documentary episode pulled from ABC's iView. At number 5, we have Anthony Callea versus Kate Miller-Heidke. The feud between the Aussie singers began in the early days of Callea's career following his appearance on Australian Idol in 2004. The roots of the rivalry began when Miller-Heidke wrote a song in 2005, originally titled Australian Idol, which was later renamed to Career Advice. Miller-Heidke took a lyrical jab at Callea, mentioning she was watching a really short guy singing that really annoying song by Craig David. This was a direct reference to Callea's hit single. The rivalry escalated and was brought to the public forefront in May 2012, following Kate Miller-Heidke's appearance on ABC's Q&A. Callea publicly criticised her contribution to the political discussion, tweeting that there was one person on the panel tonight that is a total waste of space, embarrassing rep for Gen Y. Miller-Heidke responded back with pot kettle fuckwit, another silly and ultimately harmless feud. What are your favourite Aussie music feuds? Let me know in the comments. At number 4, we have Wolfmother versus Triple J. The feud between Wolfmother frontman Andrew Stockdale and Triple J represents a unique rivalry between a band and the station that played a huge part in their initial success. Wolfmother's 2005 self-titled debut was hugely supported by Triple J, winning the inaugural J Award. Triple J also had 6 Wolfmother songs feature in that year's Hottest 100. However, as the band's focus shifted and their popularity slowed down internationally, Stockdale felt Triple J abandoned the band. Stockdale's perception led to a personal grievance that the station was selective in its support, primarily helping artists only until they achieved commercial mainstream success, at which point they would stop playing their music. Stockdale was positioning Wolfmother's traditional rock sound against Triple J's changing and more indie pop or electronic playlists. The feud boiled over in August 2012, after a public exchange on social media where Triple J trolled the band by commenting on the demographic of their Splendour in the Grass audience. Andrew Stockdale had enough during a live performance in Sydney. He declared that Triple J can go fuck themselves and labelled the station as left-wing conservatives sitting up in their offices on their government-paid wages. This triggered quite a bit of backlash, with the station's presenters and comedians such as Tom Ballard firing back with personal jabs, cementing the rivalry as one of the most hostile public disagreements between an Australian artist and Triple J. At number 3, we have Little River Band versus Little River Band. Little River Band was formed in Australia in 1975 and achieved huge international success in the late 70s and early 80s. Over time, founding members like Glenn Shorrock, Beeb Birtles and Graham Goebel left the band, while American-based guitarist Stephen Houston, who joined in 1981, remained and eventually ended up owning the rights to the band name through a company called We2. In 2002, Houston's company took the original members to the Federal Court of Australia, resulting in a settlement that gave Houston's group control of the Little River Band trademarks and prohibited the founders from performing under the same name ever again. The original members were allowed to descriptively reference their history with Little River Band in promotions. The original members are rightfully frustrated over the situation, given that the current touring band uses the beloved name and plays songs they wrote, while they themselves cannot legally bill themselves as Little River Band. At times, confrontations over invitations, including a planned Tonight Show performance, has led to angry public comments from Glenn Shorrock. More disputes have continued into the 2020s, including additional court cases involving former members. At number 2, we have Cursor versus Triple J. At the beginning of Cursor's career, he publicly accused Triple J of ignoring his music and failing to give him a chance despite building a following online and through live shows. The suspicion was that Triple J didn't want anything to do with the street-level sound from Western Sydney. Cursor often claimed that he'd been blacklisted by Triple J through various comments in interviews, posts on social media, and in his lyrics. The feud peaked around 2021 when, after years of having his tracks rarely played, Triple J broadcast one of his songs during a listener request. This request prompted Cursor to take to social media to once again voice his grievance with the broadcaster, saying he didn't want his music on the station at all because of their previous past behaviour towards him. Triple J was seen as hypocritical to jump on the bandwagon once the style of hip-hop he represented was becoming more mainstream and harder to ignore. Triple J generally remained tight-lipped, with minimal direct back and forth with Triple J hosts remaining pretty tame. This feud is another example of broader Aussie artist frustrations with media gatekeepers who choose to favour others, including international artists. At number 1, we have Frenzal Rhomb versus Kyle Sandilands and Jackie O. Frenzal Rhomb were playing the Bass in the Grass Festival in Darwin. Radio personality Jackie O arrives late to MC the gig, and in turn cuts Frenzal's set short by a few songs. Jackie O tries to speak to the crowd to make an announcement, but the Doctor drowns her out by playing Thunderstruck, which is pretty funny and well-deserved in my opinion, considering the disrespect to arrive late and cut a punk band set short. Jackie O wasn't happy. Jay also wasn't happy with her and other music industry people, given their hard-ons for pushing Australian Idol and Pop Stars contestants over Aussie bands. Jackie O and Kyle Sandilands called Jay the next day during their radio show and get into it over the phone. Jay apologises for the offence caused, which is definitely taking the high road here with these two idiots. Kyle insults Frenzal's music, calling it shit, proclaiming that's why it's not played anywhere. Jay stands by his opinions that radio DJs and personalities need to play Aussie bands. ABC's Media Watch eventually covered the story, where they call Kyle and Jackie O radio thugs. The whole situation is pretty sad given the state of music in this country. Rock bands just aren't played on the radio or in commercial spaces like they were in the 90s and early 2000s, with pop artists front and centre for some time now. It seems like Jay could see it coming way back in 2004. So there you have it, 10 of the biggest rivalries in the Australian music scene. If there's enough interest, I'll do another. Let me know what you thought of the video down below in the comments. Thanks for watching.